I want to bring you a story that you may have already heard about. A professor at John Jay College in New York suspended after he sent a tweet talking about dead cops. Let me read this to you. Professor Mike Isaacson tweeted, "Some of y'all might think it sucks being an anti-fascist teaching at John Jay College, but I think it's a privilege to teach future dead cops." I'm joined by Professor Mike Isaacson now. Mike, welcome to Chasing News. Pretty unbelievably inappropriate and offensive tweet. I think you probably deserve the suspension. What do you say?
Well, this is a coordinated attack on me by the far right. There's a group called Far Left Watch that has been coordinating these sorts of attacks against both professors and students for years. And I am planning to fight against this alongside many professors and students who have fought this same sort of harassment and death threat.
Well, let me ask you then, what did you mean by the tweet?
I would like to see the institution of policing be a thing of the past, and I would like to see the only cops be those that are dead, that we should replace policing as an institution with rapid response networks and mass self-defense training so that everybody in our country is able to resolve conflicts peacefully and is able to call on their communities to help resolve conflicts when they can't be ended.
Professor, let me just ask you, so you want a post-police world? Is that what you're advocating?
That is absolutely what I'm advocating.
Professor, just let me go back to the dead cop thing, because that wasn't just some comment, throwaway, philosophical discussion of a post-police world. This sounds like it was an intentional thing and directed at police. Are you calling for the murder of police officers?
Absolutely not. What I'm calling for is to explore alternative methods to resolve conflict that don't involve guns and arrests.
All right. Well, you know what? I want to introduce you to someone. I want to bring in Pat Colligan, who is the president of the Policemen's Benevolent Association in New Jersey. Pat, welcome to Chasing News.
Thanks for having me.
You heard Professor Isaacson, post-police world. Address that first, and then if you have any questions for the professor.
I think we could call it fantasy land. I'm glad he's teaching economics and not criminal justice, because that land doesn't exist. It will never exist, unfortunately.
Michael, what do you say about that? I mean, do you agree with Pat?
Absolutely not. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we live in the 21st century where we all have smartphones and we're able to communicate with each other at an instant, and somehow we're expected to only be able to call 911 to get help from our community. I believe that we can rely on each other in our communities to defend each other.
Kumbaya, we're all going to rely on each other. It's all a happy place. Pat, what do you say? I mean, is there an activist or a cop on the end of 911?
Maybe Mike can let me know where to go and watch that, because I'd be curious to see it. Unfortunately, you know, society just doesn't act like that. They don't, you know.
That's simply not true. There are plenty of neighborhoods that are often deprived of police protection because they're low income or people of color. And as a result, they have to resort to their own forms of rapid response because they can't rely on the police for protection. I'm really sorry about that.
Are you saying that when they call 911, nobody responds?
Yes.
Where?
Yes, I am.
Where?
In every inner city that you can think of, there are people that are living in the slums that are not able to rely on 911 for police protection.
Can you just share some of the reality? I mean, you're in the trenches, cops every day, responding to calls. You know, what's your take on human nature? And maybe you can help the professor learn a little bit. Maybe educate him.
In 2017, there's no way to, if somebody calls 911, there's no way to hide that the 911 call was placed. There's no way to say that it didn't come. We know exactly to literally the hundredth of a second how long the response is. If somebody's placing a call, no matter what part of this country it's in, they're calling 911, there's going to be a response. Absolutely going to be a response.
All right, you know, Michael, can you just stick around for a minute? I want to reintroduce our panel. I'm joined by Laura Nanos, who is an attorney, and Justin Shoham, who is a campaign strategist. So, Justin, let me start with you. You've heard what the professor said. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's far out of the mainstream to say that those comments are preposterous. Any connection between fascism and police and firefighters or anybody, those everyday heroes, is absolutely outrageous. But one thing I will say is rhetoric has gone too far on both sides. I don't disagree with that. But
Michael, your head was just thrown back in what seemed frustration and angst. Justin is way to my left, and he's saying your words are preposterous.
The idea that policing and fascism is unconnected is absolutely absurd. Ultimately, it is the police that enforce the terms of a fascist state. You can't have a fascist state without having police. So the idea that policing and fascism are disconnected is absolutely absurd to me.
Justin, let me ask you, as a liberal,
Sure.
you know, we'll say center left, maybe further left.
Sure, center left.
All right, do guys like this hurt your cause? I mean, this really is very extreme stuff.
Oh, I do, Bill. I do think they do, and I think it's important to know that on both sides, the rhetoric hurts both sides. But on the right-wing side, it's the President of the United States. And that's the difference. And we have to be careful not to jump into a fairness bias. Yes, sure, these comments are awful rhetoric that probably should never be said. But when you're dealing with somebody who has the largest microphone in the world and he says what he says, well, then I do think that there must be some attention
Laura,
there.
do you agree with that? I mean, now we're putting the President of the United States on the level of a professor tweeting about dead cops.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly that when you have someone with the platform like the president doing things to embolden these people, then that is a serious problem. But going back to what this professor is talking about, he's on, I don't know what planet he's on, because what he's doing is such a disservice. When you're characterizing an anti-fascist movement as a group of people who are against law enforcement, it is so irresponsible that I don't want this guy speaking to students. I don't want him speaking on the news. I don't want him anywhere, because all it's doing is damaging all of us.
You haven't deleted the tweet yet, best we can tell. Are you going to double down and continue this kind of language, and do you expect to be fired?
I have no idea as to what John Jay College plans to do with me. I'm currently on paid leave, like a police officer that has murdered someone. And hopefully, like a police officer that has murdered someone, I will be rehired and get the pay increases that my union gets.
Pat, I'm going to give you the last word representing the men and women in uniform, but let me ask you, if Professor Isaacson calls 911, you going to answer that call?
We will answer the call. We'll respond to the call. You know, you and I know each other for a long time, and there's not one time that I've said that we don't have our problem cops. And that's what we need to address. We need to address those police officers that are violating the law, that are making us look bad.
Okay. Thank you, Pat. Appreciate
Thanks,
that.
Bill.
Laura, Justin, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Professor, thank you for your time.
Thank you.